All right, you're good.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Hopefully you can see me. I'm Trail Kreitzer. I work over here at GoHUNT.com. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I appreciate everybody taking an hour out of their evening to sit down and hopefully, learn something. Hopefully I can help you guys out with, picking up a Western big game hunting permit and giving you a chance to go hunting. I guess first things first, my name is Trail Kreitzer, so Trail is my actual name. I get asked that a lot, and there is a story there, and perhaps some other time when I've got some more time I'll tell it, but Trail is my real name. I work here at GoHunt. My official title is I am a research manager and then the gear guy, I guess. So I pick a lot of the equipment that we carry here in the GoHunt gear shop. I've been here for about 4 years. My background is in wildlife biology, so I was a biologist for game and fish in Utah for about 7 years, and came on, like I said, with GoHunt about 4 years ago, primarily just because I love to hunt. I love this whole process. I love the application process and the planning and the prep and everything that else that goes into it. So that's a little bit about me. I've got 3 boys. My oldest is 15, and I live here in southern Utah. I guess before I jump into my presentation, I wanted to let everybody know that we're going to give 3 GoHunt gift cards to our gear shop. So those are going to be $100 gift cards, and we're going to give those away randomly to somebody that's in the seminar here. So I'm going to read those names off at the end of the seminar. So good luck in that. And those will be good, like I said, for our GoHunt gear shop, $100 a piece. One other thing is we're going to be doing about a 15-minute Q&A at the end of this. I think that's probably one of the most valuable parts of this. So I know a lot of people have questions about applying in the West and how to pick up a permit, where to go hunting or even gear. So if you guys have questions, please put those together. Ask them in the little box there at the bottom, and I'll pull those up with the last 15 minutes of this seminar and hopefully answer some of your questions. So with that, I'm going to jump in. And hopefully this works. I can share my screen, and I'm going to be presenting on how to draw or pick up permits in the West. And I'm going to be taking this from a state-by-state perspective. I'm probably going to be taking this from a higher level. There are a lot of intricacies that are involved in getting permits in the West. I'm not going to do a super deep dive because you could really go down some rabbit holes, and we could be here for 4 or 5 hours versus 1 hour. So I'm not going to do a super deep dive, but I am going to run through state by state. There are some states that I'm going to skip tonight because they're typically states that I don't apply in myself, and I actually don't advise a lot of people to apply in. And those are going to be, states like California. Sorry, guys. Washington's another state. And then Alaska, I'm not going to do a deep dive into. I'll touch on it briefly. But with that, I'm just going to share my screen, and I'm going to jump over and get started on how to plan, prepare, and get on a hunt in the West. Not just this year, but every year. So I'm going to jump over into that. Hopefully that works. Okay. So just to jump in, first and foremost, I wanted to touch a little bit on what GoHunt is, the GoHunt Research Insider platform. GoHunt was started in 2013 with this realization that there was a missing piece when it comes to Western big game hunting. So all the different Western states, they have different draw systems, and getting a permit can be pretty complex. And we realized early on, Lorenzo Sartini, who started GoHunt, that there was a missing piece to the puzzle, which was a good way to find the information that people needed to go on hunts. And so that was kind of the vision of GoHunt. Our primary vision is to combine knowledge of hunting, technology. So we are a web-based, tech company. Also pull in the data science, so things like draw odds, harvest statistics, all the information that you need to plan and go on a hunt. And we wanted to put that into a really nice, concise, usable package that worked online. And that invented the GoHunt Insider. So I'm going to show you just a brief demo of what the GoHunt Insider can do, and then I'm going to jump into a state-by-state analysis of how to pick up a permit in the West. So with that, I'm going to jump over onto this link. And I'm going to pull up my GoHunt Insider account. And with that, I'm going to just kind of run you through real quick on what the GoHunt Insider account can do for you. If I'm obviously logged into my account here, you can see in the top corner. If I hover over my insider icon here, you can see I've got a list of different options that I can use to kind of start my research. So we have things like application strategy articles. So for example, if I click on that, we're going to release those about a month prior to the draw deadlines coming up. As you can see right here, we've got application strategy articles for Arizona elk with that draw deadline approaching, also for Wyoming elk. Within those, you're going to find out everything that you would ever possibly need to know on applying for elk or any other species for that matter in any state that we cover. So those are super handy. We have this thing called Filtering 2.0 over here where you can click on a state. We'll click on Colorado, for example. We can click on a species, and it'll bring up an interactive map with all the different units in the state that you can hunt. And then built within that, we have a series of filters, and those filters are designed to help you find the type of hunt that you're looking for. So we can filter by things like harvest success, we can filter by things like draw odds or trophy potential, public land percentage. There's basically all these different filters that are built into the system that are really help you fine tune and find the types of hunts that you're looking for. So you can see here these different filters that are built into the system. You have all these different statistics that are part of this that can really help you in your search for the type of hunt that you want to go on. For example, we get a lot of questions, and I'm going to cover this here pretty quick. What over-the-counter options are available in Colorado? If I click on the select season here, I can see those options right here. So if I click on archery over the counter, I can see this map's going to filter down to just those units that is available. At that point, I can start my search by harvest success or trophy potential. So it's really this neat little tool that can help you fine tune and find the best opportunities for you. So this little filtering system is a really nice system that we've built. People find it extremely helpful in finding hunts to go on. And you guys can kind of see how that works right there. I'm going to touch on this here in a second, but one of the major portions of our website is draw odds. So you can click on the draw odds link here at the top. I'm going to get more into that here in just a second, but real briefly, I wanted to show you how our draw odds system works. You can click a various state that you're interested in. So for example, we have Wyoming coming up. You can click your residency, so resident, non-resident regular, non-granted special, or resident. We'll just for demo's sake, we'll pick resident here for this. And immediately I'm going to see all the different options that I could apply for. I'm going to see the number of tags, the number of apps, and then my odds. I can click on any individual unit that I'm interested in, and that's going to give me what I call the detailed draw odds page. This is a really important page because it's going to show me trends over time. We've done a lot of information. We put a lot of content out there recently about point creep. This is where you're really going to be able to analyze point creep and what it's going to truly take to draw a permit year over year. So that's kind of how that works. We have other portions of GoHunt Insider that are particularly useful, things like state and rules and regs breakdown. So everybody probably knows if you're trying to hunt in the West, the actual rules and regulations that the state puts out, it can be pretty tough to filter through and find the information that you're looking for. We try to put this in a format that is a little bit easier to interpret and see. So things like license costs, you're going to get all that right up front. Your important dates and deadlines, you're going to see when your draw has to come in, when licenses go on sale. So we have all this information packed within this GoHunt Insider platform that's really designed, like I said, to help you find hunting opportunities in the West. I mean, that's always been our goal, and that's what we're primarily focused on. So that's kind of how that GoHunt Insider works. I'm going to jump back into my PowerPoint here, and I'm going to run through and take a state-by-state analysis, and then also some key things that I think are important for getting permits in the West. So first and foremost, I think one of the first questions you've got to ask yourself is, what species do you want to hunt? We probably all want to hunt all the species. I would say for the most part, a lot of us are looking at those primary three: deer, elk, and antelope. Of course, we would love a bighorn sheep tag or a mountain goat tag, and those opportunities exist. But really, our bread and butter is always going to be deer, elk, and antelope. And you can kind of fine tune and look from year to year, but you really do have to decide what kind of species, what you want to hunt. What's your budget? So application and license fees. Typically, if you're trying to get a permit in the West, almost every state takes one of two different systems. One is they either require you to buy a hunting license to then apply for a permit, or they front the cost. They make you front the cost of the permits that you apply for. They pay an application fee, and then if you're unsuccessful in the draw, then they will refund you the cost of that license that you applied for. Those are the two typical ways that the states collect money from people that are applying for permits. You really do have to kind of set a budget and decide what will work for you. I would say if you want to apply for most species in maybe 8 or 9 states in the West, you're probably going to be into that about $1,200, maybe slightly more. So it's a significant cost. But you essentially, you got to pay to play if you want to be in the draw, and eventually it's going to pay off for you. The third one there, what's your primary objective and expectation for your hunt? This is a question I ask people all the time when they call in and want to chit chat with me about, about where to go hunting and what kind of permit they want to draw. What's your objective? Is it trophy potential? Because if trophy potential is your objective, then we can really fine tune the units or the hunts that you're looking for, because there are certain areas that are managed for better trophy potential. If you're looking to fill the freezer, there are hunts that are more applicable to you. Maybe antlerless elk hunts or doe antelope hunts are available to you. What's your style of hunting? Are you looking to go on a backpack hunt? Are you looking for an adventure hunt? So these types of objectives and expectations, I think, are things that you need to take into account as you plan your hunt. Are you a bow hunter? Are you a rifle hunter? All these different factors need to be taken into consideration and can really help you with your application strategy. And then finally, right here, you have to know the dates and the deadlines. Everything has to be applied for or bought over the counter. And a lot of places, they have dates that the tags go on sale if they are over the counter. And you've got to be ready and available to buy those because a lot of them are capped. There are very few opportunities anymore that are uncapped. So you got to know the dates and deadlines, and you have to have a strategy well in advance. And I'm going to touch some more on that here when I dive into the individual states. So some key terms for hunting or applying for permits in the West. The first one is draw. Everybody talks about the draw. Everybody talks about drawing odds. So what's that all about? The bulk of the Western states allocate their permits through a lottery, if you will, that's conducted through the state game and fish agencies. And it's called the draw, and you have to apply for the draws if you want to obtain those permits. Because it is a lottery, draw odds are critical, and you have to know how to understand and interpret and then use those draw odds to draw a permit. That's why we pump so much time and effort into our draw odds. We feel like we have the most accurate draw odds. We have a third-party data scientist that we work with to develop those draw odds. I work with people all the time on interpreting how to use those odds. Draw odds are critical to getting permits in the West. A bonus point system. So there's typically a couple different systems that are used by the different states. Bonus point system. So a true bonus point system is a random draw where the number of bonus points that you build up it statistically increases your opportunity to draw a permit. So for example, in a state like Nevada, it's a bonus point system. So it's a completely random draw, and they're going to square the number of bonus points that you have. And the more bonus points you have, the better your chances of drawing a permit. But it's still a random draw. So that's a typical bonus point system. And I'm going to touch on each state and each species as I go through these different states on which ones are bonus point systems. A second system that's pretty commonly used is a preference point system. So a true preference point system is one where they offer the permits to the applicants with the most points that apply, and there's no random component of that. An example of a true preference point system would be Colorado deer, elk, and antelope. If you don't have enough points for any given hunt that you apply for, you won't draw that. There's no random component to that. That's why those odds are important. That's why it's important to know how many points it's taking to draw any given hunt. And then there's a couple of different states and systems which are hybrids, and I'm going to touch on those. And what I would call a hybrid is where they give a certain number of permits to the people with the most points, and then they randomly allocate a portion of the other permits. So there are some hybrid states, and one thing I would say is across the West, they use different systems for different species even, and it seems complex, and it is a little bit, but I can promise you as you dive in, you get to know the information, and you start becoming more familiar with each state, it comes pretty quick. The last thing I would touch on here on this slide is over-the-counter OTC. You hear people talk about over-the-counter OTC permits. I would think, or I would suggest that the one thing that's really important when it comes to over-the-counter permits is you've got to be aware of where those and when they go on sale. So for example, Idaho, their over-the-counter permits go on sale December 1st of the year previous to when they actually are valid for. So for example, for permits that are valid for the fall of 2021 went on sale December 1st of 2020. So you've got to be aware of that and be ready to get your permit if you want to hunt in Idaho on those over-the-counter tags. And they did sell out quick this year. Utah, for example, has some over-the-counter elk hunting opportunities. Those are going to go on sale. They're capped, so you want to be ready and in the right place you need to be to buy those permits if you want to hunt on one of those. So there are still good over-the-counter hunting opportunities throughout the West, but you do have to be aware of when they go on sale. At GoHunt, we do state-by-state analysis. Like I said, for the sake of time tonight, I'm not going to go through every single state. I'm going to run through the states that you see highlighted there in orange. I feel like those represent the best opportunity states. Alaska is one I didn't touch on. Obviously, that's a phenomenal opportunity state. It is a little bit more costly to hunt Alaska because you've got the travel costs associated with it. But there still is really phenomenal hunting in Alaska, obviously. But I'm going to run through these other states that I have highlighted here in orange one by one, and I'm going to touch on the individual intricacies of those different states and how the draws work and some of the finer points, if you will. Hopefully add some information that can help you draw a permit in one of these states. Before I dive into Wyoming, one thing I do want to say, overall, I get this question all the time. People will say, I don't really know how to hunt the West. It's intimidating, it's scary. I don't even know where to start. And I completely understand that. What I would say though, is that there's never been a better time with more information available to all of us to plan and do these types of hunts. I've hunted all over the West. I've hunted almost every Western state. I've hunted Alaska. I've hunted it all DIY on my own. Done the research and gone on hunts, and I can tell you unequivocally, it is so much more doable than you all think. So there's tons of public land, there's tons of opportunity, all the information exists. So plan and go on a hunt. So with that, I'm going to jump into the state of Wyoming. So Wyoming, first deadline coming up February 1st for elk. Wyoming is a phenomenal elk state. I would highly encourage everybody to apply or at least buy points in Wyoming. It's a great elk state. Moose, bighorn sheep, mountain goat deadline, it is later, so that one's March 1st, and the bison deadline, March 31st for 2021. And then you have a last deadline, which is going to be deer and antelope. So Wyoming is one of these states that staggers their draws out across the spring, starting February all the way into June. So you want to be aware of that and plan accordingly. They also have a point-only purchase time frame, which is going to be from July 1st to November 1st. So in Wyoming, if you don't want to apply for a hunt, you just want to pick up a preference point, then you can do that during that time frame. Wyoming's draw system is a preference point hybrid for deer, elk, antelope, moose, and bighorn sheep. So that's a hybrid, meaning that 75% of the permits they're going to give to the people with the most points that apply, and then 25% of those they're going to allocate randomly among everybody else that didn't draw in the preference point pool. They give no weighted advantage to the number of points you have in the random draw for that. So everybody's on an equal playing field. So even if you apply with no points in Wyoming, as long as there's a random permit available for that hunt that you apply for, you have a chance of drawing. So that's something to be aware of. You always have a chance in Wyoming as long as there's a random permit. And like I said, there's really good hunting in Wyoming. The draw process for mountain goat and bison in Wyoming is completely random, no point system whatsoever. And they do have really good odds because of that. Another reason there's great odds for mountain goat and bison is because those are expensive permits to apply for. Applicants must front the costs of the licenses they apply for in Wyoming. So for example, if you apply for elk, and let's say you apply in the special draw, which is the more expensive of the two, you're going to be floating essentially $1,283 on your credit card until they conduct the draw in May. And then if you're unsuccessful, they're going to refund you that money. So you do have to be aware of that. You are going to be floating a cost of those licenses that you apply for. And if you apply for multiple species, you could potentially be floating a lot of money on your credit card. So that's something you want to think about. In my opinion, Wyoming is a must apply at a minimum build points for deer, elk, and antelope. The other species, mountain goat, I think you should apply for that if you can front the cost of that permit. Same with bison, although those ones are very expensive. But as far as deer, elk, and antelope, it is really tough to beat Wyoming, and I would highly encourage you at a minimum to at least start building points for those species. So think about that. The next state I'm going to jump over to would be Arizona, which is the next state that will be coming up. The elk and antelope deadline coming up on February 9th. They also stagger their applications across the spring. So you have a deer, bighorn sheep, and bison deadline of June 8th. So you've got some time there between those two different draws. Arizona's draw system is what I would call a bonus point hybrid draw system. So they're going to take up to 10% of the permits, and they're going to allocate those or make them available to non-residents. And up to 5% of that is going to go to the max point holders that apply for any given hunt, and then up to 5% of those will go random. So it's another one of those states where they give some of the people a reward for having applied for so long and built up all those points, but then there's also that random component. And the bonus point side of that in the random draw is it's essentially a weighted point. So if I've got 5 bonus points, my name goes in the hat 5 times for those random permits. Arizona is a state that you have to buy a hunting license to apply. You do not have to front the cost of the permits that you apply for, but you do have to buy that hunting license in order to then apply for the different hunts in that state. The cost of that hunting license is $160, so it is an investment. This is one that I think is particularly important. Always apply in Arizona. Don't just build points. And why do I tell you that? Well, it's because if you apply for a hunt and you're unsuccessful for that hunt, you're going to get a bonus point. So you might as well have a chance of drawing a hunt versus just building points. So the only time I would ever advise anybody not to apply for a hunt and just build a point would be if you can't afford the permit or you can't afford the time to go hunting should you draw. But Arizona, the odds are pretty
Can you hear me now? Did that work? Hey, I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, my apologize. So let me share my screen again, and I'll jump back in. So I just finished up with Arizona. Man, I apologize. I don't know what happened there. Verizon. Hey, where I live, it'd be good if we had Verizon. Let's see. So if you can all see my Utah there, right? On my screen? Perfect. So Utah is my home state, obviously. It's one of my very favorite states to hunt because I live here. It can be awful tough to draw a permit as a non-resident. Deer, elk, antelope, moose, bighorn sheep, bison, mountain goats. So that deadline is coming up on March 4th. So that's approaching. They do have a different deadline for antlerless species. So antlerless elk or elk, deer, antelope, all those coming up in mid-June. But Utah is a bonus point hybrid state for limited entry species like deer, elk, antelope, also the once in a lifetime species, which would be moose, sheep, bison, and goat. So a hybrid system, meaning they are going to split the permit. So 50% of the permits are going to be allocated to the people with the most points. 50% of those are going to be randomly allocated, also giving you, an advantage with the number of bonus points that you have. It's a preference point state for general season deer. So if you apply for general season deer in Utah, the people with the most points are going to get the permit for any given hunt. So be aware of that. Utah is the state that does not require you to front the cost of the licenses that you apply for, but you do have to buy a hunting license in order to apply, which is about $72 just for the hunting license in Utah. Utah is another state similar to Arizona. Always apply, because you just never know when you're going to draw a permit. You're going to get a point if you're unsuccessful in the draw, so you might as well apply. Don't just build points in Utah. General season deer in Utah, I think, is one of the best opportunities. You can still draw a permit within, maybe 2 to 5 years, depending on what you're looking for. It's still a really good opportunity to hunt, and I use general season deer as kind of a reason to keep me applying in Utah, and that's what I typically recommend for non-residents. When you look at the odds of drawing a permit in Utah, they can seem awful long, and they are for limited entry species like elk or deer. But that general season deer hunt is a hunt that you can go on every few years, and like I said, that you can kind of use that as a bonus to keep you applying, if you would. Another hunt that I think Utah is highly underutilized is the over-the-counter elk hunt. So they have over-the-counter spike elk hunts on almost all the limited entry elk units. So you can buy those over-the-counter. They are capped. There's 15,000 for the entire state. So those are going to go pretty quick. But what that allows you to do is to hunt spike elk on those limited entry units. So if you want a really fun hunt, you want to come out and see a bunch of big bulls and get a chance to harvest an elk and put some meat in your freezer, that over-the-counter spike hunt is still a really good hunt. Utah also has some any bull hunts. Those are not quite as good as maybe what exists in some other states, but it still is an opportunity to get out and go hunting. And with a little bit of research, you can certainly find a spot to go hunting. New Mexico. So New Mexico is one of my other favorite states to apply in. The thing I like about New Mexico is that it is a completely random drawing. There's no point system whatsoever. It's kind of like really playing the lottery. It's like buying a scratch-off ticket. You just never know what's going to happen, and I love it for that reason. Application deadline is coming up March 17th of 2021. They offer really good hunting for deer, elk, antelope, and then New Mexico also has all these other species that you can apply for: desert bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, and then some of these exotic types like ibex, oryx, or even Barbary sheep. As I said, New Mexico's draw system is completely random. There's no point system whatsoever. Everybody's on an equal playing field. You do have to buy a hunting license in order to then apply in New Mexico, which is about $65 for non-residents. That used to be non-refundable. That is no longer the case. You have to buy that hunting license in order to then apply. Applicants have to front the cost of the licenses that they apply for. So this can be pretty expensive in New Mexico initially. And if you're unsuccessful in those draws, they're going to refund you the cost of those licenses. But initially, that investment can be pretty significant. I've had as many as 3 different credit cards with all the different species spaced out across those 3 cards in New Mexico. So that's something that you want to be aware of if you want to apply for multiple species. I think New Mexico is an awesome elk state. It's a state I think everybody should apply for in elk. It's a great opportunity state for deer. It's a really good state for antelope. They've got good antelope numbers and they have excellent trophy potential. So think about that. Application choices is at the bottom here. So New Mexico, you get 3 choices on your application, and they're actually going to consider all 3 choices before moving to the next applicant. So you want to make sure that you include 3 choices on your application. You kind of want to stagger those. So you want to put a really good hunt with low odds as your first choice and stagger those towards hunts that have better odds that maybe don't have the quality as your first choice. That's going to maximize your application, because if you're the first person, then they pull your application off a pile. You want to make sure that you get the best hunt. So that's why you want to include that one as your first hunt, your first choice. That's New Mexico. I think New Mexico is still an awesome state to apply in. I would encourage you all to take a good look at New Mexico every single year, especially, like I said, for elk and antelope, and then potentially deer if you're looking for an opportunity to go hunting. So the next state I have is Montana. So Montana, you can see I have a bunch of different bullet points. Montana's a relatively complex state to apply in, and I get tons of tons of emails every single year about Montana, and I'm going to touch on those here. So you have deer and elk deadline coming up April 1st of 2020. You have a separate deadline for moose, bighorn sheep, mountain goat, and bison, which would be May 1st. And then you've got the antelope and the antlerless species draws are later in June. So you do have some time to kind of plan out later on. They do have a point purchase only time frame in Montana, which is going to run from July 1st to September 30th. That's if you don't want to apply in the regular draws, you just want to simply build points. You can certainly do that during those summer months. Montana is a preference hybrid point system for the general season combo licenses. So those licenses are your big game combo, which is your deer and elk license, elk combo, which is your elk, small game fishing license, and then you'll have a deer combo, which would be a deer license, a fishing license, a small game license. Those are allocated on a preference hybrid system. So 75% of those licenses are going to go to the people with the most points. 25% are going to be randomly allocated. So an interesting thing about Montana's system is that you actually have to apply for a general season combo license, deer, big game, or elk, before you can then apply for the limited quota special permit. You actually have to draw a general combo license, be successful in that drawing before your application for your limited quota special permits is even considered. So that's something that you want to be aware of. Those are two different systems. The special limited quota permits are on a bonus point system. So it's a random draw. The bonus points that you have are squared, giving you statistically better odds of drawing those permits. So those are two different systems, two different types of licenses, one being general combo on the preference point system, bonus point system on the special limited quota permits. And like I said, you kind of have to plan ahead because you do have to draw the general combo before your special permit application is even considered. So you definitely want to take that into consideration. You must front the cost of the general combo license that you apply for in Montana. You do not have to front the cost if you apply for moose, sheep, goat. You only have to pay the application fees and then the bonus point fee, of course, if you decide to build those for that. You must also front the cost of the antelope license when you apply for that. Montana, kind of the thing I would touch on right there at the bottom is I still think it's one of the best opportunity states for elk, deer, and even antelope. They have really phenomenal elk hunting. They're very generous with their season dates. So if you draw that general combo permit, you can hunt with your bow. If you don't fill your license, you can come back and hunt with a gun. Their deer licenses on that general rifle hunt, they run through the month of November when those deer are rutting. It's a really fun hunt. So I would highly suggest you either apply, go on a hunt in Montana, or at a minimum, build points, both preference points and bonus points. So that's kind of a rundown in Montana. I didn't even really scratch the surface on all the different questions that people could ask in Montana because, like I said, it is somewhat complex. But those are kind of the finer points that you ought to be aware of. So Colorado, you have deer, elk, antelope, bighorn sheep, moose, mountain goat, and that deadline is April 6th. And all species must be applied for on that April 6th deadline. It's a true preference point system for deer, elk, and antelope, meaning that the permits are allocated to the people with the most permits that apply for any given hunt. No random component whatsoever for that. That's why you can really kind of start to predict when you might draw. So building points in Colorado is highly recommended. It's a different system for Rocky Mountain, bighorn sheep, mountain goat, and moose. That is a preference weighted point draw system. So what they do is they require applicants to build up to 3 preference points. At that point, you're actually considered in the draw for moose, bighorn sheep, and mountain goat. And then beyond that, it's a random draw with a weighted point system. So statistically, The more weighted points you have, the better your chances of drawing. You do not have to participate in that weighted point system after you get your 3 preference points. So, you know, that's up to you on kind of if you want to buy those weighted points or not. Personally, I do not. I don't think the odds are good enough with those weighted points beyond the 3 preference points to really justify me paying that $100 every year. So I don't. I just have my 3 preference points, and I hope for my random chance at drawing. They have a random draw system for desert bighorn sheep, so that's completely random. Everybody on the same playing field. So you want to be aware of that. You cannot apply for desert bighorn and Rocky Mountain though in the same year, so you do have to kind of decide which one you want to do. You do have to buy a qualifying hunting license in Colorado, which is going to be about $82.78 before you apply. You do not have to front the cost of your permits when you apply for them in Colorado. Colorado is currently, and probably will always remain, I hope, fingers crossed, the best backup opportunity, especially for elk, because you have those over-the-counter elk seasons for archery, 2nd and 3rd rifle seasons. You can buy those permits right up to the day that that you want to go on your hunt, and it's still probably the best over-the-counter elk option in the West that you can absolutely count on. Overall, Colorado still one of the best opportunities. I said I definitely think everybody should build points in Colorado. You know, they have draw hunts for elk, draw hunts for deer, antelope. It really is a phenomenal state to hunt. And like I said, I think everybody should be building a few points in Colorado and going on a hunt. Idaho. So Idaho, you have split time frames for their applications. You have bighorn sheep, moose, mountain goat deadline on April 30th. A subsequent draw deadline for deer, elk, and antelope is June 5th. Interesting thing about Idaho is that you can't actually apply for all species across the board. So you can either apply for one of bighorn sheep, moose, or mountain goat, or you could apply for deer, elk, and antelope. So you can apply for those 3 together, but you cannot apply for bighorn sheep, moose, and mountain goat, and deer, elk, and antelope. You have to pick your species in Idaho, which is potentially why they have such great odds. So Idaho also has one of the better opportunities for over-the-counter licenses, but like I said, you do have to plan ahead because those are going to go on sale the year prior. So for example, permits that are valid for this fall of 2021 would have went on sale, you know, December 1st of 2020. For planning purposes, I have here, you know, if you want to buy a permit for over-the-counter hunts in Idaho for 2022, you want to look at buying those December 1st of 2021. Their draw tags, which they call controlled tags, are allocated through a random draw, no point system whatsoever. Everybody's on an equal playing field. As I said, applicants must choose their species, so they have pretty decent odds for some of those once-in-a-lifetime trophy species like bighorn sheep, moose, and mountain goat. You do have to buy a hunting license, which has gotten pretty expensive in the state of Idaho. So you're $185 in order to then apply for the different hunts. Moose, sheep, and goat applicants, they must front the cost of those licenses when they apply for them. You do not have to front the cost of the deer, elk, and antelope licenses if you apply for those. And I still think Idaho is one of the best opportunity states to hunt, but you have to plan ahead because, like I said, those go on sale about a year prior to when you'd actually be hunting. Nevada. So draw deadline for all species is going to be May 3rd of 2021. It's a random draw bonus point system. So it's a completely random draw, but they do give your bonus points. And a bonus point is squared in Nevada, which is statistically, like I said, it's going to give you more advantage of drawing a permit the more points that you build, which could draw in your first year. Nevada is one of those states, again, I tell people if you're going to apply in Nevada, you're going to get a point if you're unsuccessful in the draw. So apply for a hunt, don't just build points because like I said, you never know when you're going to get lucky. You do have to buy a hunting license, which is $155. So it's not cheap, but you know, it's the price to pay to play. Application choices in Nevada. You get up to 5 choices when you apply, and similar to New Mexico, they are going to take into consideration all 5 of your choices before moving to the next applicant. So reality is you could draw any of your 5 choices. Always include 5 choices because like I said, they're going to consider each one of them. And you also want to stagger those, similar to New Mexico, starting with your best hunt, worst odds, down to your best odds, decent hunt is your 5th choice. So think about that. And the last bullet point there I have for Nevada is it's a long game. You got to be willing to apply in Nevada. Elk tags are extremely tough to draw. Bighorn sheep tags also extremely tough to draw. You got to be willing to play that long game, and even then, you're going to have some luck to draw some of those permits. Deer hunting in Nevada is still really, really good, and there are some hunts, especially if you're a bow hunter, that you can pick up with relatively few points. So think about that. Nevada's a great state. Like I said, though, you got to be willing to play the long game in Nevada. Oregon. So Oregon. Draw deadline for all limited quota species May 15th. It's one of the later ones. It is a preference hybrid system for the draw tags for deer, elk, and antelope, meaning that a portion of those is going to go to the high point holders. Another portion, the lesser portion, 25%, is going to be randomly allocated. It is a completely random draw for bighorn sheep and mountain goat with no point system whatsoever. So I think personally, it's pretty intriguing for those 2 species if those are on your bucket list to hunt. So, think about that when it comes to bighorn sheep and mountain goat in Oregon. You do have to buy a license in order to apply in Oregon, which is about $172 for non-residents. I typically do not advise people to apply for species like deer, elk, and antelope in Oregon. It's a cost reward thing. I just don't feel like the reward is worth the cost. They actually give very few non-resident permits through their draw. It's still a good option for over-the-counter deer and elk. They've got over-the-counter elk hunting. If you're looking to hunt rosies there on the West Coast, it's still got some good opportunities for over-the-counter elk. There's still some over-the-counter deer hunts available. And I actually think if you decide you want to hunt Oregon, those are probably your better options as those over-the-counter hunting opportunities. So that's Oregon. And I think that's probably going to wrap up the different states. It looks like I got about 15 more minutes where I can answer some questions. So let me see if I can get back to my screen here. So it looks like I got 12 questions. And I'm just going to jump in those and grab them. So first question, with COVID creep from last year's tag submissions, what did the data tell us in terms of opportunity this year? Will that creep go back? So the COVID, I actually thought COVID would have a bigger impact on odds than I think it did. I think people still applied and people still bought points in the states that they were able to do so. So if we looked at the number of applicants or the number of points in a state like Wyoming, people still bought points, people still applied. There was about I want to say about a 17% increase actually. So people are still applying for hunts. There's still, people out there. I don't think COVID had nearly the effect that we thought it might. You definitely do have to look at those detailed draw odds page though and kind of see what your creep is gonna look like. Let me see what else we've got. For Colorado, do you lose points if you draw a tag on a second choice? You do not. So you only lose your points in Colorado if you draw your first choice, which is something to think about because what that essentially would allow you to do is apply for, a preference point is your first choice, a hunt is your second choice that you could draw. And that way you would draw a permit to hunt as your second choice and still build a preference point for that year's application. One thing that we do here at GoHunt is being a GoHunt insider is you can actually look at the draw odds as a second choice. So you can look and see what hunts were available in last year's draw as a second choice. You can include that in your application and still put a permit in your pocket to go hunting this year and build a preference point for the future. So that's a great state that you can do that in. Wyoming's another state that you can do that in for deer, elk, and antelope. There's still some antelope hunts that you can draw as a second choice, allowing you to draw a permit to go hunting and build a preference point for a future hunt. So that's another state that you can do that in. Let's see. When applying for Wyoming elk in a heavy wilderness area, are you hurting yourself waiting to see if you draw to secure a guide or outfitter? Will there be very limited availability? Yeah, so for those of you that might know, Wyoming is this anomaly. And I would publicly say that I hate this rule. You actually cannot, as a non-resident, hunt a wilderness area in Wyoming without a guide or an outfitter. You have to either have a guide or an outfitter or a resident to go with you. And that definitely has to be taken into consideration when you apply, because there are some units in Wyoming that are totally wilderness. So you would need to have a guide or outfitter in place prior to hunting those units. So for example, unit 60, totally wilderness for elk there in Wyoming. So you would have to have a guide or an outfitter. Some of the units that have wilderness, you could still hunt on your own because there's enough public land that's not wilderness to hunt on your own. You really would have to take it by case basis and see. Typically in Wyoming, I would tell people to review the draw odds, look at the hunts that are available to you at your point level. And if you're looking at going on a guided hunt, I would advise you to try to have a guide in place prior to applying and drawing that permit. Let's see what else we have. I saw a comment addressing the hybrid draw in Colorado. So we get asked about the hybrid draw in Colorado, which is this little blurb that Game and Fish use to try to give people an opportunity to draw permits that are highly sought after permits that you would never catch otherwise. So, you know, like a Unit 10 or Unit 2 elk tag in that northwest part of the state. The hybrid draw is really only applicable to residents, although, you know, it could be applicable to non-residents. The thing that happens is that you fill up your non-resident cap prior to that hybrid draw ever being done. And so you actually never draw any non-residents into those units in that hybrid draw. So that's kind of an answer and a bit of a blurb to that comment that I saw. You'll never draw any of those permits in the hybrid draw. It's in Colorado as a non-resident. It's really only applicable to residents, if you will. So something to think about. Let's see. When applying in a state such as Wyoming, does a bonus or preference point count towards any unit or point unit specific? So those points are species specific. They are not unit specific. So for example, you're going to have bighorn sheep points or deer points or an elk point. Those are species specific, not unit specific. And that's the way it is for every state. You know, they're not unit specific, if you will. Let's see if we got a couple more. Does hunting and applying as a party in Wyoming hurt your chances in the draw? It does not, actually. So Wyoming is the one state that will actually over allocate the number of permits that are available for any given hunt to cover a group application. So for example, if you apply in a group application with 3 people and there's only 1 permit remaining and your application gets pulled, Wyoming will actually over allocate their quota to cover the number of people on that application. So it does not hurt you in your odds at all to apply. The only way that it could potentially is if, let's say you've got 10 points and you apply with a buddy who's got 5 points, or yeah, he's got no points. You're going to go in with an average of 5 points. That's something else that's interesting about Wyoming is that they actually average a group application's points out to the 4th decimal point. And that application will actually go into the draw with that exact number. So that's something to be aware of. And if you're a GoHunt insider and you look at your odds, that's what you would see, those in-between point levels. So that would take into account those group applications. Let's see. What else do we have here? What are some of the go-to locations to look at, target for those of us further away from the West who are just looking for a good adventure and fill the freezer, not necessarily looking for a trophy animal? I think some of the hunts that I would suggest are these antlerless hunts. So there's, states like Wyoming. They have a lot of cow elk, a lot of doe deer, doe fawn antelope hunts that you can draw in that reduced price draw, which is a separate draw from the full price draw. But you can draw those and you can come out and get a chance to hunt the West. I think those are phenomenal opportunities. Utah has the antlerless draw. They also have those spike tags, like I said. Colorado has antlerless draws as well that you can apply for. A lot of those you could pick up as a second choice. You could come out and get a chance to hunt. So I would say if you're looking for an opportunity to just hunt the West and fill the freezer, I would really look towards those female species, and specifically I'd look at cow elk in the West. And I would look at Wyoming, Colorado, I'd look at Utah, and then maybe potentially even some of the other states like Arizona. So that's probably my best bet, I would say. Obviously, Colorado is a great state for over-the-counter opportunities. Idaho is a great state, but like I said, you do have to plan ahead. Let's see. What states or hunts do you recommend for a first-time hunter? Okay. I think one of the best hunts for a beginning hunter is an antelope hunt. And Wyoming, I would say, is like the king of antelope hunt states. They have more antelope than people, closely followed probably by Montana, which is an excellent antelope hunt state. I think that's a great opportunity for a new hunter. It's great for youth hunters. One, because typically the terrain is not ultra demanding. And then two, it's a pretty game-rich environment, especially in, in a state like Wyoming. I took my 15-year-old on his first hunt when he was 12 in Wyoming. We went up there and hunted antelope. You get a chance to blow a lot of stocks. You get a chance to work into those animals and get set up and get a good shot. So personally, my opinion, I would say great hunt for a beginner would be antelope or maybe even mule deer, but antelope would be my favorite. Let's see. We got time, I think, for maybe one more. How do you think Idaho raising prices and capping the over-the-counter permits hurt? I would say it hurt people's opportunities. Obviously, I mean they're letting a whole lot less non-residents into those units. It definitely hurt people that are trying to hunt with their families or with their buddies. You couldn't put together a group hunt, if you will, because the way that they did that system, people weren't allowed or didn't have the ability to purchase multiple permits with their friends or their family to go on a family hunt together. So definitely hurt that. It'd probably do some good overall for the people that drew permits because they capped those pretty heavily. So, for example, an area like the Beaverhead or the Pioneer or the Diamond Creek, those sold a lot of non-resident licenses and they could get pretty crowded. Capping that for the people that got permits this year going into 2021, they may be in for some really phenomenal hunting with much less pressure. But it definitely hurt, it hurt in that it's no longer a backup state to pick up a permit. And it hurt, like I said, friends and family that are trying to put together hunts together. For the people that got permits, it could be a really good hunt this year. Let's see, I got time for one more maybe. Let's see. Okay, so are there Wyoming antelope tags that can be drawn with no points and have a reasonable chance of bringing home an antelope? There absolutely are. There's still even permits in Wyoming, primarily in that northeast corner of the state, that you could even draw as a second choice. The limiting factor in those areas is and will always be the amount of public land that's available to hunt in those, unfortunately. It's not that you can't find success, because you definitely can. Those animals are there and available to hunt, but you do have to dig in and do the research on where the accessible public land is to hunt. So there are some units, definitely. There are still units, like I said. I took my boy to Wyoming on his first elk hunt. That was a unit that we drew as a second choice. Tons of public land, we just had to do some hiking. So I think we were a couple miles in. That's probably it for me as far as time goes. I wished I had, let's see if I can get some winners. Okay, so it looks like I got 3 winners. So if you're out there, I'm going to read those off. The winners are Harvey Watts. So Harvey Watts, congratulations, you won a $100 GoHunt gift card. The second person is Kelly Kell, and that's KELLYKELL. Congratulations, you also won a $100 gift card to GoHunt. And we'll be getting in touch with you. And then the last individual is Mark Stronings. That's Mark, and then last name THONNINGS. Mark Stronings, congratulations. Also Kelly and Harvey. We appreciate you guys, and we'll be in touch and get you those GoHunt gift cards, and those are good for anything that you guys want in the GoHunt gear shop. So with that, I think that's it. You know, I hope that next time we can all get together. This would be a whole lot more fun if I could see your faces and read the crowd and take some questions from the crowd. So anyway, that's me. You can always reach out to me. You know, trail@gohunt.com. You can also just reach us at gohunt.com, and of course, you know, join the Insider and, you know, do your planning and preparation that you need, and go hunting in the West. And like I said, it's definitely way more doable than you all think. So good luck. Appreciate you taking the time, and you know, good luck this fall.